All right, welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to dive into the really profound journey of a fictional philosopher, a guy named Heinrich Vorn. It's a story about how he's forced to face the devastating real-world consequences of his own ideas. It's about how a philosophy of complete and utter despair can, somehow, paradoxically, crack open a door you never knew was there.
So let's jump right in. This one line, it just says it all. This quote perfectly captures the philosophical prison at the heart of our story. This was Heinrich Vorn's entire worldview, a totally closed system where any hope you have of getting out is just, it's an illusion.
So first things first, let's meet our guy, Heinrich Vorn. This is a man who is so completely consumed by his own philosophy that he's basically just retreated from the world. He's crushed, totally crushed, by the very ideas that once made him famous. He's just living in some rented room, haunted by this intellectual system he spent his life building.
Okay, so to really get Heinrich, you've got to understand his core philosophy. He imagined this universal force he called the will as like the engine behind everything. But here's the catch. This will doesn't actually want to achieve anything, it just wants to keep on wanting. And all the friction from that endless, pointless striving, for Vorn, that's what suffering is. It's not a bug in the system, it's the most basic feature.
And this really gets to the heart of it. See, for Heinrich, the biggest philosophical question isn't something you can just answer with logic. It's more like a wound that you experience. It's the raw, undeniable suffering of being conscious. And trying to heal it, that's just trying to forget the fundamental truth of what it even means to exist.
And this is the moment, right? This is where the philosophy just leaps off the page and into the real world. Because ideas, they aren't just abstract thoughts in a book. They have consequences, and sometimes they can be really, really dangerous. Heinrich is about to find this out in the most personal and devastating way imaginable.
So, just when he thinks he's out, the world he tried to leave behind comes banging on his door. The whole thing kicks off with this unexpected encounter with a man named Gerhard Hesse. His daughter, it turns out, has taken Heinrich's philosophy not as a diagnosis of the world, but as a kind of dark permission slip.
So you have Lena, and she's basically become the living, breathing, tragic conclusion to his whole philosophy. She isn't just reading his ideas anymore. She is living them. She has bought into his diagnosis so completely that she doesn't see any reason to go on. She has become the living proof of his argument.
Now, Heinrich's first reaction, he wants nothing to do with it. He argues, hey, I'm not responsible. Your daughter just used my work to confirm the despair she already had. But the father's plea is just so desperate. And Heinrich, almost against his better judgment, reluctantly agrees to just one conversation with Lena. A conversation that will change everything.
But here's the thing. This conversation, it does not go the way you'd think. It turns into this tense philosophical showdown, where Lena, who's supposed to be the disciple, starts challenging the master. And a single, tiny, unspoken crack starts to form in his perfect system.
Lena just looks him in the eye and calls him out. She doesn't see him as some brilliant master. She sees him as a coward. She basically accuses him of stopping his philosophy short, of seeing some further, maybe even more terrifying truth, and just turning away from it, leaving all his readers trapped in the despair he's so perfectly described.
So what does he do? He's backed into a corner, and he flips it right back on her. He makes her confront this massive contradiction at the very center of her despair. If everything is so pointless, if it's all just a machine of suffering, why is the machine inside her still running? Why is she still here?
And boom, that's the moment. That's the turning point. Because when she's forced to look at her own direct experience, Lena finds something that, it just doesn't fit into the neat, logical, closed system of the will. There's some part of her experience that simply refuses to be explained away by all that bleak machinery.
This refusal, this unspoken and yet, it forces Heinrich to finally say the thing he himself had been avoiding for years, the very thing Lena accused him of running from. He has to finally put a name to what's left over when the system is accounted for.
And he gives it a name. He calls it the remainder. And for him, this is a revolutionary idea. It's this part of our consciousness that isn't actually caught up in the machine of wanting and suffering. It's not another kind of will. It's something totally different, something that just witnesses.
So you're probably asking, okay, how do you find this remainder? Well, you can't get there through effort, because that would just be more of the will doing its thing. No, Heinrich describes it more like a path of descent. It only shows up when the will has totally exhausted itself, when you finally stop fighting, and this state of simple, open witnessing just becomes possible.
And that's the big aha moment, right? The huge insight here is that the gap in his perfect, logical system of despair isn't a flaw. It's an opening. The fact that the system isn't perfectly sealed shut is the greatest gift of all. It's that painted door suddenly swinging wide open.
I mean, this revelation just changes everything for Heinrich. It shifts him from being this philosopher of endings and despair to being a practitioner of presence, and this is the most important part, a practitioner of continuation.
And you can literally trace his whole journey right here. I mean, look at this. He goes from being a celebrated professor to a broken wanderer just crushed by his own intellect, and then to this confrontation with Lena, which finally leads him to a whole new way of being, not as a thinker, but as a witness.
This slide just lays it out perfectly. You've got the old Vern versus the new Vern. Before, the wound of simply existing was a dead end, a prison. But now, he sees that exact same wound not as the final word, but as the very opening through which something else, the witness, the remainder, can finally come through.
And this is so important. The remainder isn't some prize you win or a destination you finally get to. For the new Heinrich, life isn't about finding the answer or escaping anymore. It's about the daily practice of just witnessing what is, right here, right now, without judging it. It's about continuation, not some grand transcendence.
So, when you boil it all down, what's the big takeaway here? The purpose isn't to solve the problem of suffering or to finally heal the wound for good. It's simpler and maybe harder. It's just to stay awake to the whole experience of life, including the suffering, and to witness it all without falling back into the seductive dream of a perfect, logical explanation for everything.
And so this whole incredible journey, from a painted door to an open one, it leaves us with this really profound and provocative question to carry with us. What if the point of our deepest wounds isn't to fix them, but to see them as the very lens through which we can finally witness what truly remains? Thank you for joining this explainer.